So yeah, I'll make it formal, or it's semi-formal. So welcome, and hello, people that are watching online. Good to see some new faces and some familiar faces. I'm John Grant, and Jason Gershenson and I founded this thing about a year ago. It's been a year.
It's been a year.
Yeah, a year ago. So we're the Portland, the unofficial Portland chapter of of legal hackers, to the extent that that's a thing today, which I think it still is. And we're really excited. We got a couple of guys from Davis Wright Tremaine de novo. For those of you who don't know, Davis Wright Tremaine had a nice honor at the ILTA conference earlier this year. We named the Innovative Law Firm of the Year, largely due to the efforts of, I think, folks in the de novo group. So
mostly you and me, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what I heard.
No one's watching.
That's certainly what I told Jay.
You'd love to hear that.
So anyway, welcome. We're going to talk about data visualization in big law. I'll let you introduce yourselves further. Yeah, great.
All right. Thank you guys so much. So I'm Andy Peterson. I always have to remember this because we just made up our own titles not that long ago. Innovative Solutions Strategist for DWT de novo. So de novo is the innovation team within Davis Wright, and I'll talk a little bit about it here in a second after we introduce ourselves. But the way I describe my job primarily is a scenario like this. An attorney will call and say, hi, the client has this request. I'm not really sure how to price it. And I'll say, okay, well, I'll connect you with Brian. He's our pricing manager. And they say, yeah, I'm also not really sure how to do it. Like, I'm not actually sure if we even can do it. And then that's when you get started around, where can we apply technology or alternative staffing or process and that sort of thing to help them actually do the work. Because clients are asking us for different things, asking lawyers for different things than they were a couple of years ago, for sure. So I'll be talking a little bit about de novo and then a little bit about data visualization. And then Mike will be talking about kind of some of the work he's doing as well. So, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Michael Collier. I've memorized my title. I'm a legal process strategist. So I've been an attorney for 12 years. And actually, there's a woman sitting in the back of the room, Stella Manabe, who I've known since I was, even before I became a lawyer, when I was a law student. Anyway, I've been an attorney for 12 years, business lawyer, went to Nike for a while, was in-house there, and then did some legal or some labor and employment consulting before going to China. I was the director of operations and legal counsel for a process improvement company. And that's really where I cut my teeth on some of the methodologies that we'll talk about today that we essentially join with our data analysis. Ultimately, the story will be, law firms have lots and lots of data, lots and lots of information. When that information was originally accumulated, it was not necessarily accumulated for purposes of data analytics and reporting and sort of the precision that it takes to make data-driven decisions. It was ultimately, captured for invoicing purposes and for, more directed towards revenue. Now we like to use some of that same information to make better decisions and to help our clients make better decisions about how they deliver services to their internal clients. So our primary clients are in-house counsel, and their clients are business groups, marketing, finance, sales, whoever it is. What we do for them and what we really try to do is elevate the value that they can bring. Oftentimes inside of an organization, law departments are considered a cost. I had a friend who worked for Wyden and Kennedy, and she used to call lawyers dream killers, because when the lawyer comes in, the lawyer is probably going to, slow things down. And that's kind of the stigma that even in-house lawyers have. What we try to do is raise their game a bit so that they can provide more strategic value as opposed to just tactical value and then, taking care of problems when they come up. That's what Andy and I will essentially talk about today.
That was great. And that actually talks a lot about what de novo does. So that makes my beginning part a lot quicker. But I will talk a little bit about history and kind of how we got where we are, because I think it's interesting. We're not where we are today. We're in a much different place than I think we expected or ever thought we would be. So we, probably 4 years ago, we had we called our R&D team, which was a couple of partners, 4 or 5 partners, I guess, who were told they should spend a quarter of their time over the next year coming up with new things. So coming up with, commoditized work. They don't like to say commoditized work, but basically come up with products, come up with different ways of working with clients, go out and investigate technologies, really try and do some true kind of research and development that as you folks know we don't really do in legal. And out of that were there were sort of a range of different ideas, but one of the partners, well, 2 of them, had particularly good ideas. So one of them was Jay Hull, who became our chief innovation partner at Davis Wright a couple of years later. The other was Lawton Penn, who became our client service and engagement partner. And Lawton in particular had some real opportunities with clients. And she said, but I just don't have, I need like a person to help me, get things across the finish line, really execute. And I was in marketing at the time, and they looked around the room and they said, Andy, could you help Lawton for a while? And could you take on this new role? And I said, sure. So I became a senior program manager. And my mission in the first year was really just kind of help her work with her clients to provide some of these new solutions. And you're going to see what some of that stuff is here. As that kind of grew, we started to say, you know what, if we could really apply some people, if we could take a couple people out of the machine, a couple of lawyers out of the machine, if we could bring on some folks in similar roles, kind of similar to mine, people who understand process and client experience and technology, maybe we could really do something here. And so the firm took a leap not even 2 years ago now. We started, De Novo is 23 months old this week, where we said, we're going to take first Jay out of the machine. So Jay he was a almost 30-year corporate partner. He became the chief innovation partner, and that's where he was going to focus his time. Supposed to be very little client work. It's not really the way it's worked, but primarily focused here. And they brought myself and Kate White, who's not with us today. But Kate she also came from marketing business development. She does primarily client service, client experience work. She's great. And we brought Michael from the outside, process improvement guru. His resume speaks for itself. I just love hearing him tell the story. And then I went from Nike to China, and then it's amazing. And so that's it. That's the De Novo team. There's one more guy. Jeff Sabato is our just superstar IT web developer. And we talk about him as being sort of the 6th member of De Novo, but he really has a full-time job in IT, kind of keeping the lights on as well. So we don't get anything done without him, but we don't really own him like we sometimes think that we do. And so De Novo is 6 people. It's a pretty small group. Now we lean on people in this room. Stuart in the library, certainly, Denise Farnlin, and Lit Support. We pull marketing and HR. We pull a lot of services from other places, but we're not a separate entity like a Safe Harbor Lean, for example. We are a department within a 500 lawyer law firm. We don't have much budget, so we just have ourselves and a little bit of travel, and we take from where we can and kind of scrape. We're hustlers kind of within a really large organization. We're a tiny, scrappy startup. And so fast forward a year and a half or a little more, and in September, as it says there, we've plastered that thing everywhere, the logo. We applied and made the final 3 for the ILTA Innovative Law Firm of the Year up against Littler and Safarth, which was really funny because those were the firms when we started out explaining to our lawyers how you can be innovative in a law firm. Those are the firms we would show them, right? We would say, Littler's done these great things in terms of sort of technology and productizing certain work. Safarth, it's all lean. It's 700 process maps and that sort of thing. These other firms are doing it. We could do that too. And then, 21 months into it, we were right there with them and actually won, which was pretty amazing. We certainly didn't expect that to happen. And what that did really is it sort of launched us internally sort of into the stratosphere. So now all of a sudden people within the firm, okay, so you guys won an award. Someone says you're great. And so could you talk to my client? Could you do this? Could you do that? In an effort that was really focused on kind of creating a culture of innovation within a big law firm, really quickly shifted to there were so many external client opportunities and revenue to be made based on bringing us or the experience that we have or the kind of things we do into the client organization. And so whereas we had some goals for our first 2 years. We wanted to make a certain amount of money, and then we wanted to work with a certain number of attorneys. We wanted to spread geographically. And it's much beyond where we wanted to be, to the point where we're expected to be, to the point where now we're thinking, okay, where do we want to be a year from now? Where do we want to be 2 years from now, and what can we do? And we've been actually landing some big work from new clients based in large part on the just new conversations that we're having and the new types of things that we're doing. So it's been a really interesting experience to get here. So we're gonna, Michael and I do similar things, but kind of from different directions, just given our different backgrounds. But on some of the new stuff we're doing now, we're starting to kind of merge kind of the Andy way, the Michael way, Andy's tools, Michael's tools into some new places that I think are going to be really cool for us. So I'll let Michael kind of talk about the direction that he's headed, and then I'll show you a couple things that I've done. And certainly take questions along the way. We take questions at the end as well. Just let us know, and we appreciate you being here.
Good. Let me pull it back up. So before I jump into this PowerPoint, I'd like to know who's in the room. I know some of you, but I'm sure there are some of you who don't know each other. So let's go around really quickly. Just, if you would, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your current role, and I guess what brought you to Legal Hackers. We can start with you, John.
Okay. Like I said, I'm John Grant. I am, let's see, my law practice has historically been around copyright and trademark law. And I still do practice some of that, but most of my time right now, I work with lawyers and law firms and legal departments on legal process improvement, specifically using lean and agile tools.
My name is Chris Lutkus, and I'm an account manager at Docs Corp, an Australian-based company has produced legal software productivity, so productivity software for law firms.
My name is Jason Gershenson. I'm an attorney with Whitestoners, and
You get your own
brought me to and what brought me to Legal Hackers is law firm, technology, and process.
I'm Kurt Rafus. I'm the enterprise business intelligence analyst over at Umpqua Bank, and we're interested in data visualization.
I'm Esty Shea. I'm a librarian for the Ninth Circuit, and I was drawn to Legal Hackers because I'm interested in public access to legal information.
I'm Sue Mecklem. I'm librarian and competitive intelligence analyst at Davis Wright Germain. And I'm here out of curiosity and because I'm interested in visualization of data.
Yeah. Stuart Zimmerman, Director of Information Resources at Davis Wright Germain, part of the home team. I've been with Davis Wright Germain for 15 years and been in the legal industry for 25 years. And yeah, just wanted to learn more the nuance about what our team is doing.
And I'm Kim Berger, and I don't really have any relationship with the profession. I'm just here to do Stuart company. I'm his husband, so just so we have conversation. I know what he's doing.
Excellent.
Data visualization.
I'm Darren Sands. I'm a partner at Lane Powell, actually. I'm here to steal all your secrets. And I'm a partner, and I'm the chair of our data security group and our e-discovery group, and I'm an antitrust litigator, and I sort of play the role of the innovation partner at our firm. And obviously Davis has been doing great things. And so I think I emailed you a while ago, Michael, just a web, just because I think what you guys are doing is really cool. So just here to check it out. So
I didn't realize you were wearing so many hats.
I had too many hats, but this is the interesting hat. So.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Stellar.
Hi, I'm Stella Minabe, and I practice elder law. 2/3 of my clients are right here. These are my parents. And I'm here because I'm interested in data and visualization, depending on Michael to put those things together in one evening.
My name is Dean Nakama. I'm an IT auditor with Hewlett Packard. I'm here visiting my parents and my sister. I attend different meetups in the Bay Area, data analytics related. So I was just interested to hear what's going on here.
Very cool. Thank you all for coming.
So John, can I move around a bit? Or
Oh yeah. Well, you know what? If the camera catches it, great, and if it doesn't, then they should have come.
Okay. Let's go to the first slide. Okay, so I'm going to move quickly because I detect that most of the folks in the room are interested in data viz. There's an important component to data viz though, and that's establishing data quality, and that's kind of what I'm going to talk about. How do you set up a system so that you can capture the right data, so that once you have it, you can use it to glean insights from, and that's where Andy's been focusing. So we'll do a brief introduction. We'll talk about process improvement as a framework. We'll talk about process design. That's how you build a system to capture the data that you later analyze and visualize. And then we'll just move on to Andy's unless there are questions. Let's go to the next one. We can skip that one. That's me. All right, so what we do, the framework that we use with our group, with De Novo, is we talk about this triangle: people, process, and technology. Go to the next one. And we always find this intersection between those, and so we really embrace the fact that in the current day and age, we're going to use technology, but like so many folks are concerned about, you can't, dilute the importance of people. And then the thing that brings those two things together is a process that both takes into account the tech capabilities along with the human capabilities and limitations. So when we talk about, our primary client, we're talking about in-house counsel. So the in-house counsel food chain kind of looks like this. You have the GC who's at the very top of the food chain, and this person is, going to be interacting with the C-suite on a regular basis and providing them with, hopefully strategic advice. Below that, you might have in-house specializations like your IP folks who have come from a law firm. Now they're working in-house in the legal department because, whether there's a relationship between that lawyer and the company, or if the company decided that it wanted to just insource some of that specialized work, they'll bring somebody from the outside in. Then you have this sort of self-help component, and that's something that we refer to with regard to in-house counsel being able to create systems on their own that they can use to manage commoditized work or whatever it may be. And then finally, at the bottom, we have legal process outsourcing. This is where in-house counsel take a body of work and they send it outside to get it done for cost efficiency purposes, or maybe they don't have the requisite subject matter expertise for the work. And so our value proposition is essentially, you can call this value or you can call it risk on the y-axis, but essentially, most in-house counsel live down here where they're doing a bunch of high volume work that's essentially low risk, but that's not why they join this company typically. They're thinking here, they want to be here, and we want to help them get there. So we can use process improvement techniques, a more structured approach to problem solving, and data analytics and visualization to take some of that high volume work off their plates and then provide back to them business intelligence so that they can provide more value added service to their in-house internal clients. So we use various tools to get this stuff done. And we actually have expanded our group to some extent, bringing in some legal project managers, and we manage the project lifecycle through various tools. The MIAG is the basic process improvement framework. The D stands for define, the M is measure, the A is analyze, the I is improve, and the C means to control. So the reason that I think it's good to use frameworks like this is when you start working with a bunch of people, you want everyone to be on the same page, speaking the same language. Think of it like a football team or a basketball team. You have to be able to call a play that everyone understands and everyone knows what they're supposed to do when that play gets called. Otherwise, it's very hard, I think, to coordinate a bunch of people at the same time. Also, if you have a framework that you use, you have like these positive redundancies where similar people have similar skills and they can understand where a particular project is in the life cycle. If someone gets hurt, so to speak, like on a sports team, and they have to go off to the sideline, you have a substitute player that can jump right in and keep playing the same role. And that's where you get some of that positive redundancy. When we look at the project management lifecycle as well, we look at it in stages. So there's the piece where you engage the stakeholders, figure out who they are, what they want, just like the DMAIC framework where in Define, we figure out how we're going to what we're trying to solve and how we will know when we've solved it. You look at the planning stage, the implementation stage, and then a feedback stage in the project management lifecycle. All of this stuff is designed to help us to understand where we are at any given point, and then specifically what deliverables should we be able to provide at each of those stages. And it's very systematic. And the tools that we roll out, you have to talk to your stakeholders and figure out where the pain points are. And then you use various tools to capture those pain points so they can be well documented, again, to create that redundancy, continuity, and standardization. Go to the next one, Andy. So what I'm going to do now is talk about a couple of business cases. The first one is a process improvement case, and that's what we're looking at here. And the second one will be a process design case. So oftentimes when folks talk about process improvement, they think that process improvement folks only come in after the system is broken. But that's not always true. We can come in and fix the system that's broken, but we can also build a system that breaks less frequently. In this case, the system was broken. These are actually workflows. This is information going in and out, and it was supposed to be this hub where the centralized person was going to take in a bunch of, so backing up a bit, this is a high volume lease review deal where a talented attorney with a good relationship with a big company landed a deal where that company said, we're going to send all of our lease review work into you. And so this company, every day they have folks going out there and identifying sites that the company might buy for their business purposes. When they identify those sites, they identify the site owner, and then they try to enter into a lease with that site owner. When they do that, you need a lawyer to come in to negotiate the lease. When that happens, they send the lease to us. And so you can get up to 150 leases in a week, all coming in the door. And that means 150 new matters. At law firms, when a new matter comes in, there's some administrative work that goes into opening that new matter. You got to set up a file. You have to do a conflict check. You have to create a paper file and give it to your lawyer so that they can begin doing the work and so on. And so what happened here, really high volume all going into this person because she is a trusted employee of the attorney, the relationship partner behind the project. Now, when she became this trusted employee and became this sort of the center of the wheel, they didn't have the high volume that they had when I came in. Actually, when Andy came in first, and Andy kind of punted to me and said, "Here, Mike, you see what you can do with this."
New guy should look at this.
Right, and I should have known when I saw him smiling as he's kind of passing this over to me that something was up. So what happened was, long story short, just to summarize, at one point, this person had 500,000 emails in her Outlook inbox, literally. And every time she opened it, it crashed. But that was the only intake email address that the clients had. So, and there was some concern about changing that because they didn't want to disrupt the flow. So we had to figure out a way to go in and change this, like extract her from the mess, while at the same time maintaining all of these workflows so the right information got to the right people at the right time. And interestingly, all of these people, except for where it says assigned attorneys, were also responsible for managing invoicing. So they had to manage intake up to 150 new matters in a week, and then invoicing for each of those matters. And so if you know lawyers, you can imagine what happened. Lawyers good lawyers anyway, they really want to serve their clients. So when the client sends in more work, if we have to decide, should I do the work or should I send my invoice out so I can get paid? They're going to do the work. And then we have a backlog of $3 million that didn't get paid because we couldn't get to the invoices. So what do? We fix it. We go to the next one.
The client wants to pay $3 million. We can't get them invoices to pay us.
At one point, the client came to us and said, please send us an invoice. We have all this money earmarked for you and we can't do anything with it. Would you take the money, please? And so we came in and we streamlined it. We looked at it and created more flow, basically. So you have instances where there's a bunch of, crisscrossing, and just intuitively, you can imagine that that's not going to be the most efficient way to get from point A to point B. Well, if we can figure out a way to stretch that out, streamline it a little bit, then we should be able to get to from point A to point B. And in this, we essentially worked in that place of people, process, and technology. We created an information system in-house that could capture all of the information that they needed, including discrete data items that they needed in order to get the work done. We changed a few positions. We did some training to empower the stakeholders, the folks on the ground. We involved, obviously, the relationship partner behind the matter so that he could provide his input to make it even better. And then we created processes that included controls so that we would know if we created a process and then the process broke, that we have to come in and fix it again. And then and the results were great. So, you know, we eliminated overtime. We reduced the amount of time that these folks worked each day. We cleared a $700,000 backlog in a month or two. We increased, you know, payment cycles by 50%. Great success. But more importantly, in all of that, you should see these folks at the office now. One of the frontline administrators who was drowning in work, crazy overtime every week, overtime eliminated, she moved to a different role that she always wanted to move to. She always wanted to be like a higher up administrative assistant, basically, that does a bit more sophisticated work. I went there last time. She even dresses differently. Her hair is like, you know, really nice, and just like, what happened? You know, we go to this firm barbecue thing, and they're high-fiving us and stuff. You know, that's the more rewarding part of it all. It's great to make money, but it's also even better to empower people.
Changing lives, man.
Hey, you know, we should start a nonprofit. Let's go to the next one.
Here.
So now we'll talk about building a process. So in this other case, we had an instance where there was no process in place, and the client wanted to outsource all of their global procurement work. And they do work in, you know, the UK, Africa, Latin America, China, US, and they wanted to figure out how can we take this work, which again, if you remember that, you know, high volume, lower value piece, how can we take this work, give it to trusted counsel? Trusted counsel provides us with insight to let us know that, you know, the work is getting done, and then also provides us with business intelligence so that we can use that to direct our internal clients. And so we you know, pitched for the work. We won the work based on this design. We essentially designed a system that has a single point of entry and then a single point of distribution. And we also talked about creating specialties in certain categories depending on the volume and type of agreements that came in. Essentially designed to create knowledge management pockets so that when the work came in, ultimately we would reduce those cycle times. Let's go to the next one.
So I have a question. How did you, I assume that as you're going through this and you're talking over to the various clients trying to develop the process, you're going to encounter natural conflicts with people who want the process to be one way and other people who want to be processed a different way. Did you have any particular methodology or approach that you did to overcome those challenges?
That's a great question, and that's really the most important part. As you probably know, and some of you other folks who deal with systems, it's more about people than it is about the technology. So we actually spent 2 days with these folks outlining the current state, and that's what we see here. It's basically a SIPOC map where we look at the source of information, the input itself, or, you know, data types, the process, the outputs, and then the specific client. Because you can't really solve like there was this. I used to work with this engineer in China, a German guy, and he always used to say, Michael, do not ask me to solve the problem until I've had an opportunity to properly analyze it. You know, because he's basically saying, I don't know the answer. How would I know the answer? I don't even know the problem yet. And so we spent 2 days sitting down with them to really understand the current state. Let's go to the next one. So in addition to understanding the current state with regard to the way that information flows, we also talk about, all right, where does the information come from? Who's going to send us these projects? And what's up with these people? Do they have any, you know, peculiarities? What sort of format are they going to send the information in? What sort of, characteristics will the information have? What sort of attachments? What should we be looking for? And it has to be a two-way street of information where you essentially define for the client what you need in order to get the work done, and they tell you what they're going to give you, and what the actual work is. Let's go to the next one. And so in that, once you go through your stakeholder analysis, then you can define your service level agreement and KPIs, right? So now we're saying we've defined the problem. Now, how are we going to measure what we're doing? Because we believe what gets measured gets managed. So we can define just a few information items that we can properly capture, measure, and report on. Then we can create controls to know whether the system is operating efficiently or inefficiently.
You said that you use the SLAs to get to the KPIs or the KPIs to generate the SLAs?
Well, the client generates the SLAs because we're really talking about what do you need from us, and then how do we measure what you need from us. But another thing that they needed from us, we'll go to the next one, Andy, in terms of KPIs for their system is this information. It's really a business intelligence. So they want to know where's the information coming from geographically. They want to know what's our cycle time. How long does it take us to, get a contract in the door?
Basically.
It's from our interaction with the client. How long does it take us to get stuff done? Because that is how they're going to be measured by their clients. So our clients are in-house counsel. Their clients are business groups, and the business group is going to say, if it takes you more than 30 days, then I'm not happy.
So I asked you that question to ask this question. How did you get the KPIs handed to you, or did you have to figure them out?
It was a mix. So remember that I said we spent 2 days just sitting down talking about, what they needed and talking about their current state. Out of that conversation essentially came the information that they would like to see from a reporting standpoint. And out of that conversation also came a discussion around how they're measured. And that's one of the key questions, right? If you're going in and you're trying to help in-house counsel, one of the primary questions is, how are you measured? Because we want to make you look good. How do you score a touchdown? How do you make a basket? Because we want to help you do that. And once we figure out how they do that, then we can figure out how to measure when they're doing that. And once we figure out how to measure when they're doing that, we can create a system to capture those metrics, and then we can create a system to report on and visualize those metrics. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so once we figured out how to measure, go to the next one, Andy, then we built a system that would help us to measure. And it starts with sort of the concept of where is the information going to come from and where's it going to go. Which information system is going to capture it. Once it's in the information system, where will it be stored? Once it's stored, how will it be exported? Why will it be exported? A lot of this has to do with the way that I like to think about it is start from the end, like what's your end, what do you actually want to accomplish, and then work your way backwards to figure out how to accomplish that. So we start at the end and we work our way back to the beginning. And so what we did was, after we created that workflow analysis, we built a system, just a simple system in SharePoint to capture the data that we just talked about. So we have those SLAs, and then we have those KPIs that the business wants to see. And so we created an intake system so that we capture that information on the front end. One of the challenges that law firms have is really data quality, because as I said before, lots of data in there. Lawyers are knowledge managers, but the information hasn't been aggregated for the purpose of business intelligence and data analysis. So for example, if you look at librarians, for instance, when information comes in the door, the first thing that you all are going to do, and I'm assuming this, but I go to school with some librarians, so I think I know some of this stuff. You figure out where the information is supposed to go, because you're going to have to use it at some point. You're going to have to find it, and someone's going to want to see it, and then you're going to have to put it back where it was, because someone else is going to come and try to find it. And if you spend all your time trying to help people find stuff, it will probably be not the best and highest use of your time. If you can upfront figure out where the information is supposed to go, you can help folks find it faster, and then you can use your time doing things of more value, like preparing for more information to come in and making sure that it's structured and associated with similar information. And so that's essentially what we do with these intake systems. We try to figure out what do we need to track in order to give the client what they want at the end. Remember, starting from the end and working our way backwards. This is a reflection of what we want to be able to report on and analyze at the end. Let's go to the next one. And this is an interesting one because to get this done, lawyers are doing the work. You got to get them to input some of the data. And it's inconsistent with some of the stuff that they normally do, which is more of reading and writing and analysis. They don't necessarily like to do data input. But if you convince them that there's something in it for them, there's a WIFM, then you can get them to do it. WIFM is just really what's in it for me. And so, interestingly, in terms of the lawyer's psyche, they want to please the client. So we find that, the carrot for the lawyers, the client wants it. Hey, the client wants it. You want to do it, don't you? You want to? Yes, you do. You want this problem, don't you? You do. Yes, you do. And then they'll do it, right? And then you have to keep constantly reinforcing the fact that the client wants it. And after a while, if you build these systems, they run themselves. It's really interesting. Let's go to the next one. So, long story short, and Andy's data viz is way cooler than this. We grab this stuff, we put it into a format that clients can sort of understand intuitively, and we work with them on a regular basis to really interpret that information, what it means for their business, and what of that information they can use to sort of enhance their value add to their internal clients. Just a few more slides on the visuals. So we can skip that one. It's the same thing, just sort of looking at cycle times, trends, region. This one is interesting because once you get to a point where you can actually rely on the data, then you can start doing regression and correlation to figure out which data has what types of relationships, and ultimately get to a point where, potentially you can do some predictive analysis and say, all right, if I, reduce X, I'm going to get more Y, or if I give more, if I provide more X, then I'm going to get more Y. And if you just, think about it, back in your algebra days, Y is a function of X, right? So your output is a function of all of your inputs. Some of those inputs have a specific relationship with that output. By the chalkboard, I write it up for you. But it's if you can really identify those most influential X's, inputs, then you can begin to manipulate them and thus manipulate your output. And that's ultimately where you want to get to. You can't get there unless you have good data. And this is the same thing. So we're just looking at, trends and looking at relationships between some of the data items. Next one. And then looking at correlation to see if there's any sort of, positive or negative correlation between some of the important variables associated with those outputs. And that's it. Now we'll walk into the wonderful world of data visualization, because I know that's what y'all came to see.
To be fair to Michael, my stuff is flashier because he's required, how can I put this? He's required to use certain tools by his client. So he would not necessarily have picked the style, except it's exactly what they wanted.
We'll see. And now we have a new client who isn't so driven by which tools we use, and so we should be able to do some pretty cool stuff.
That's it right there. It's the difference between a PowerPoint and a Prezi, right?
A question for you, Jeffrey. How did you build in, or how have you built in continual improvement for the process that you've drafted?
That's a great question. So for me, again, it starts with, do you have a system that effectively captures data? And do you have a system that effectively captures the right data? Because continuous improvement is really about data-driven decisions. It's not about guessing, right? But the qualitative component I find super interesting because that's the people piece. And we've built continuous improvement into the system by not only having the data, capturing and analyzing the data as a regular part of our regimen, but also meetings. Very simple. We meet, we do stand-up meetings twice a week. And we do.
With the client.
With the client.
Right.
But we do one with the client once a week. We do one with our internal team once a week. And then we do one with the client each month. And then we do a quarterly meeting with the client. So it's that cadence, you know, it's almost like training people to work in a particular way that they're not used to working in. And we're on the phone with these people constantly because there's always something that needs to be adjusted.
Some tweak.
Yeah, and that's why I think you have to work in teams, because if you have, I could spend literally I could have a full-time job dealing with that system that we just talked about. If I can't convince other folks to help me, or we hire other folks to help and we begin to delegate, then I would only be doing that. I wouldn't be able to build any more systems. But the cool thing is, you know, I think it's a team sport. You know, if you can get a bunch of people, you know, who will own their individual tasks, even if you extend that team title to your client and say your task is to show up to this meeting every week, pay attention, provide me feedback, and tell us what are we doing well, what are we doing poorly. My job and the team's job is to respond effectively and in a timely manner, so we not only can deliver that continuous improvement element, but we build that expectation in the client that that is a part of the way that we do things. So that's how we do it. It's again, that people, process, and technology. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm. So I got one other question at risk of getting too granular, but I saw on your intake form or one of the forms there were some quality control tick boxes. So
Yeah.
just wondering if you could talk a little bit how you came to quality assurance, quality check, and built that into the process.
One back.
Yeah, so some of it.
There it is.
Which one do you
Second
mean?
from the bottom.
Yeah, that was the only one who noticed it.
Here, you mean?
No, quality control, current form, strategic partner.
Oh, this. So this is stuff that comes out during the define phase.
Yeah.
When you're sitting down with the client and you start to identify the different information items that are going to come in and the different characteristics that those information items have, you also have to do a risk analysis to figure out, you know, what is the risk associated with each of those information items and workflows. Once you do your risk analysis, and we like to do an FMEA, it's a failure modes effects analysis, we really identify, like, if this is a strategic partner agreement, what's different with that agreement as opposed to a regular master services agreement? Oh, strategic partner agreement, that's with one of our big partners, and if something goes wrong there, it's going to go bad for a VP is going to know about it. Or it's such a high dollar agreement as opposed to one of the smaller MSSAs that we really need to be careful about this one. And then here, this is actually an internal quality control element for the client that after we mapped out the current state, we understood it's supposed to go through that step. If it hasn't gone through that step, then we probably shouldn't be reviewing it and needs to go back to the client so that that step gets ticked off and then it'll be recycled through us. So a lot of it comes out through the define phase, and then some of it just comes out through trial and error.
I like your quality control on the form.
Yeah.
Everything's a drop down except for the one free-form text field, and apparently you're going to sanitize your data inputs by doing it at the source.
And
don't use any quotes.
If you can't, I don't think, I wouldn't, okay, if my job, I think it would be too hard to try to sanitize the data after the fact, especially with lawyers. They're verbose, they're all, sort of individual, they're going to be calling the same thing, different stuff. Even if you don't have some sort of limit in the number of characters that they could put into a field, somebody's going to write you an essay, and then how are you going to analyze that?
Oh, I know. I just use a JS trap on the far side and then pop it back to them while they're putting it in.
You tell me about, what do you do?
I'll tell you about it later.
Yeah, I was going to say, teach me about this, because I have no idea. This is the way that I figured would be, based on what I know, this was the best way to do it. Tell them, look, I need it like this, up front. I'm not going to clean up behind you. You clean your own room, because this is important.
Exactly, because they own it.
It's important to you. This is what your client wants, not my client. I'm here to help you.
So this is sort of like the $1 million question for people who work in the law firm setting, and so I'm sure you've heard it before. Obviously, when you're interacting with a client who is either wants this or can clearly see the value to them, which is what you were explaining earlier. They can see how this is a little bit smoother, but how do you deal with the issue of, I think Susskind says, how do you explain to a bunch of millionaires that their business model's broken? Just the cultural issue of taking lawyers and forcing them to think differently about problem solving in a really fundamental way. I realize you guys are iterating and proving and getting success stories and building out, but in terms of that group of the partners who haven't been exposed to clients who are really telling them you do this or not, are there certain things that you found to be successful in moving the needle with them and getting them to really be open to cultural and process changes?
It's a great question. I find an aluminum baseball.
Right.
Strong shake. A strong shake. I'm not going to hit you. I'm just going to shake you. Great question. So, the short answer is for those resistors, you don't deal with them. You ignore them. You deal with the coalition of the willing. There are some folks out there who will work with you. And if you can do well on that one project, word will spread and you'll have more opportunities. And you just continue to, sort of snowball. You're not going to get everybody. You don't want to get everybody. You're going to need a really big team if you get everybody. You want to work with folks who are willing, who have interesting projects, and they're not someone who's going to take the problem and throw it over the wall and expect magic to come back. They're folks who actually want to be a part of the solution. So you're really looking for those folks who want to be your teammate as you pursue innovation, as opposed to those skeptics who want to tell you that it's unnecessary, that you're chicken little and the sky isn't falling.
Skeptical lawyers, I'm not
You never heard of those?
And we've learned through sort of trial and error over 2 official years before that. I mean, you start to ask questions. We have less issue now with skeptical lawyers and more with people who want to throw something at us and, okay, go do my thing now.
Right,
And we'll say, okay, well, who's your first client that's going to use this? Well, I literally hundreds of clients who's the first one who could use this, right? Like, who is going to, we don't want just attorney co-owners with us. We want client co-owners because, you build the greatest thing in the world and then go sell it. It's pointless. We're using human-centered design principles to sit down with the client. You start building something for a client, they got to see it within the first 2 weeks. They got to have, you're not going to build it and hand it to them. They've got to be involved at the beginning and ongoing. Otherwise, you're going to miss the mark. That's really more an issue with this.
And Andy, since he started on this journey at DWT before I did, he was a part of many of those stories where a lawyer came in and said, hey, build this. I have tons of clients. And Andy said, yeah, I'll build it. And he builds this thing, and here it is. And the attorney says, oh, what is that? It's the thing that you asked me to build. Oh, sorry, I can't. And so at this point, we learned, trial by fire. As Andy said, the conversation has to be not just a conversation with the DWT attorney, it has to be with the client. If there's an RFP pitch conversation, you put us in the RFP. We're going to go up to the face-to-face or telephonic meeting. And we're going to talk about what we can do. And when the client chooses us, it's going to be not just because we have excellent lawyers, but because we have an innovative value add, and we know that as a part of the deal. And what we've found when we approach it like that, we almost have more work than we can handle. And it's work that matters because it matters to the client. Answer your question?
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
So I'm going to bust myself here at the beginning. It says copy of LMA Tech, October 2015. So you're not the first people to see this, but I'm not going to show you the whole thing. I'm going to show you the highlights. And then I'm going to show you something new that they didn't see in San Francisco. Let's see if we can do this full screen. Come on, buddy. There it is. All right. So the idea behind this is, and I'll tell you a couple of stories, and I'm going to do them quick, regarding kind of how we first got into what we consider data analytics, or at least I did with Lawton, who I mentioned at the beginning, and then I'm going to talk about an opportunity that came up afterwards based on what we've done, where it wasn't sort of reacted. It was that we found a client who was like my muse for like the person who got it as much as we did. And I'm going to skip the last one, but then I'm going to show you something new that I don't think anybody else has really seen. So I mentioned we're putting the logo on everything, so I want to make sure you saw that. In fact, I'm putting it on my Christmas card this year. I hope Mrs. Peterson's okay with that. She made me watch it. So I sent her the link, and I was like, the kids should watch this during dinner, so Ashley and Haley can see me. Hello.
And Harley, if you're watching.
Yeah. The audience is 4. It's our relatives. That's okay. So the opportunity we came with a specific client who said, listen, I feel like I've got a hunch. I've got a hunch that they're in one of my work groups, and this is employment work. I'll put that out there. In one of my work groups, I'm seeing their name. I'm seeing this work group come up over and over and over and over again, and it shouldn't. They're not big enough to be kicking off this many matters. And the matters we're talking about are administrative agency charges, like at the EEOC, for example, or state agencies. Demand letters where the lawyer says, we're going to sue you if you don't give us some money. Actual litigation, when they actually have gone and filed suit, arbitrations, that sort of thing. So I'm seeing this over and over and over again, but I don't have any way to prove to my board that we need to do something about it. And he came to us and said, every time I get one of these things, I send it to you. So you've got all this data about my work. You know more about it than I do. Can you help me prove my point? And furthermore, can you start to think after we said, yeah, sure, we'll figure it out. He started asking us more questions. How many matters do I have? Which ones should I care about? Basically, what he wanted to do is provide business value. He didn't want to just check off all these things that were coming in the door and pay us X amount to do it every time, and maybe get a little cheaper, and get a discount. He wanted to be able to tell the business people, here's what's really happening, and if you make this change, it's actually going to make business sense, not just legal sense. And this is what came out of it. Months and months of digging into retroactive data. Michael mentioned you don't want to go back and look at old data and clean it up. You don't, but we have to do that all the time because we're dealing with hours, we're dealing with dollars, we're dealing with stuff that wasn't generated for the purposes in which we're actually needing to use it. And we gave them this, and we said basically, and this is all true, work group X, they're 47% of your fees and costs, they're 10% of your population. It's incredibly simple. And as soon as you look at it, you say, you have a problem. You assume that if you have 10% of your workforce, you kick off 10% of the cost, right? Everything should be one-to-one relationship. All things being equal, and here's everybody else hovering around one-to-one, but that's your problem. And he was able to take this one simple, probably one of the first Tableau visualizations I ever did. And he was able to take this to his board, and they said, oh, okay, we get it. And he's able to take then these cultural change consultants that cost him $500,000 to come in and work with this particular work group. And later on, as we got further down the way, we were able to show in 2011, you were here, and here is how the cost has gone down over time. And now he has an ongoing story to tell about, I found that, I showed you it was an issue, I was able to fix it, and it's making a difference. And that's a business thing, not just solving legal problems. We then took it further. We started looking more in depth. This is the most confusing thing I've ever made, but the idea was he started to say, okay, how do I know if I get a certain claim that it's going to cost me more than other claims? And so I started to look at, okay, in a retaliation claim, for example, you got 47 of them, so you got a lot of them, unfortunately, over a number of years. If the retaliation claim is included, that's going to cost, it's costing you $54,000, these fees and settlements. If it's all the other ones that don't have retaliation, it's $41,000, $42,000. So you're running about 1.3 to 1 if there's a retaliation. So when you get national origin is probably a good example. So it's 4.3 times as expensive if it's there than if it's not. And he was able to say, you know what, the next time I get a national origin one in, it also goes to risk analysis. I'm going to pay some attention to this thing because studies show it's going to cost me a bunch of money. They may actually, because of the nature of their business, they were worried more about sexual harassment. And those are high, but they also had a small count of them. They only had 5. So it wasn't actually a lot. And then this is something I was supposed to mention too. So there was a group that was their biggest group that they thought was the most trouble, particularly in the area of sexual harassment. That's them. They were actually not. They were below the expected amount. And that was almost as equally a big story as this bubble that popped all the way up to the top. I'd like to make sure I make that point. And we also found some surprise stuff. And is this, yes, this is real. I can't tell you anything else about it except that the numbers are true. We started seeing the same names over and over again. He knew the guy who filed 5 claims. He knew who that guy was. But we were seeing a couple people that were under the radar a little bit, but you'd come up, they'd had a charge and another charge and a demand letter, let's say. So we call it a repeater. They'd come up with 3 different distinct matters. And we said, because we were looking across the whole portfolio, we were seeing some of the same names come up over and over and over again. We called those repeaters. And when we dug into the costs, so again, fees and settlements, those 16 people and their 41 matters were almost equal to these other 82 people who would each come up once. So these are people who filed a claim, they got severed, separation agreement, they got some money, they went away, or they filed a claim and they sorted it out, and they were able to stay and work long careers, but they only came up once. And yet these 16 people were almost equal to those 82 people. And that's not something necessarily that you're looking for, but it's something that we found. And that led him to say, okay, well, how do I find the 17th person? Where are they in the life cycle of an employment situation where they've got a bunch of grievances or a bunch of internal complaints? Who's going to be number 17? And can I learn more about those 16 people and go back and find them before they get this far? That's real business intelligence. It's a real ability for the lawyers who are typically saying, they go to the end of year meetings and the business, the CPAs and the MBAs have all this data and all these metrics, and the lawyers don't. The JDs could sit at the table with them with stuff like this, which was really exciting for that particular client. So based on that, we then managed to come across another client, a bigger national company, and we realized that there was a certain strategy that we could build out. We can unlock data from multiple sources. And I say unlock because people say, I got to go dig, you got to go find this data. It's there, right? You just have to unlock it, you have to clean it, you have to massage it. But in a lot of cases, you have it. We need to aggregate it in a single warehouse. So you pull it together from different places into one place. We could go over the top of it with existing tools. I'll talk a little bit about those. And then we can provide that exact output that the client needed at the end. And that is how I found this particular guy. So he had seen some of the stuff that we had done through whatever, and he had been thinking about this. He's an employment counsel of this big national company. And he said, you know what, I don't want to go through necessarily, and I don't have pictures. Oh yeah, I do. Okay. He said, I've got a bunch of data locked in my HRIS. I've got a bunch of, we'll call it proprietary event management, which is basically like all the grievances. So it's not just, HRS is one person with a bunch of columns, right? It's your name, rank, serial number. Proprietary event management is that person may be in there 12 times for 9 grievances and 3 internal complaints. So you have to sort of pivot, one person all these different areas. Actually, the zoom's there. There you go, now you can see it. Then we could take some tools we have to collect additional information that isn't in his systems, right? So information about the charge, what the agency was, information about, obviously the agency, what are the claims, what are the things that are specific to the matters. We can collect that stuff ourselves. We use a tool called Contract Express for that currently. So Contract Express is it's a document automation tool. It is not really created for this purpose, but it's something we had, and it makes these really neat kind of web forms where you can set the drop downs. Really easy to kind of add to and change and edit ourselves. So I don't have to go to a vendor and say, can you remove this question and add to this drop down? I can do it all myself in the background. It actually does kick out documents, but primarily I'm just using it to collect data in SharePoint into a big table, right? Into a big SharePoint table. And then we have Elite Financials. So we use Elite for financials for our hours and stuff, and we can pull that in as well. So I've got 4 different places the data is coming from. It all goes into a data warehouse, and then I throw Tableau over the top. And there are a lot of options for data visualization. Tableau happens to be the one that we use the most. And the result was a couple of new things. So we were able to show them a little bit about risk. So the various answers to various questions. If he's a former employee, that's only worth 1 point. We had our lawyers sit down and say, all right, what if someone's a former employee? What does that look like? Well, let's say that's 1 point. Okay, well, what if they're current? Well, it's 5, because they're still there. Every day, every time something happens, they're thinking it's retaliation, right? They're collecting more and more sort of grievances. What if you let them go during the investigation? Well, that's 10, right? Because now they have a retaliation claim. So just sort of putting the lawyers to thinking about what are the different options that can come up and trying to put some kind of science to the art. And we collect the numbers, the underlying data, it all gets computed and it puts up a risk score, and if it's under 20, it's low, and if it's under 30, it's medium, that sort of thing. So we're trying to give a little bit of risk analysis in addition to the attorney reading the charge and say, that's low, or that's high, we're trying to add something to it. So you're able to go a little deeper and provide risk, provide real-time tracking. So one of the questions in the matter sort of questionnaire is, where is it? We identified some milestones of a typical charge between intake and going to the agency and eventually being closed out. And then we're able to go in and say, all right, well, this one's moved to the fact gathering stage. And because we ran that risk analysis over the top, we know it's a medium, so it's yellow. So this client now, instead of getting a word table from us once a month with the status of all of their matters, which was really innovative 2 years ago, and still being used, as we learned the other day, by some firms that we work alongside, now he can come in to an extranet in real time, and he can say, all right, I only have 5 minutes. What do I need to see what's in our house for review, and you can go learn more about those particular things. So real-time tracking matters.
And you're using stop lighting.
This was new.
The coloration has meaning.
Yeah, so it goes back to this risk score.
Okay.
So if it's green and it's low, then it's going to be green down here as well. And then he can say, okay, if I only got 5 minutes, I'm going to look at this one because it's red, right? And find out something about it. So that real-time tracking is something that we were able to do working with this particular client. We'd be able to show trends. So we were able to get a bunch of retroactive data in as well and show by, these are lines of business, let's say. For your line of business, here's that spike in 2011, and then you made that change, you made that decision, you add some training, and you can see how it starts to go down. So you're able to show kind of broader trend data over time. And we started to capture subjective stuff, and this is the stuff we haven't really cracked yet. And we're doing it. I think we need to be better at it. But the idea of not just dates and dollars and numbers and titles, but in certain situations, the overall treatment of the charging party, some of that kind of softer stuff, sometimes it really helps. And how can we capture that? It's not a 5, it's not a 1 sort of situation, but the training of the supervisors was actually harmful. Maybe it wasn't the reason that the claim was made, it wasn't the reason that you end up paying $100,000, but it was a thing that was there. And how can we see some of the general culture was helpful? The documentation was neutral. Well, the point of documentation is to be helpful. So if your documentation across 100 of these is neutral, and we should look at your documentation. So how do you capture some of that kind of softer stuff? And we're using this from most helpful to least helpful is the way we're doing it. Try and look at some of that as well. And that is actually something that recent clients have been really interested in building out more. But this client wanted something specific at the end of the year. So he wants to go to his lines of business. We haven't done this yet. It's actually coming. I keep talking about this. It's actually coming up like 6 weeks from now. So I'm actually getting nervous. He wants to go to each of his 6 lines of business, and he wants them to give him a single sheet of paper with 4 boxes on it. The first box is 2015 data. Second one is compared to last year, showing 2-year trends. Some key highlights, some things to note, and advice for 2016. And I'm going to have spent a year working on all of this stuff so we can have 6 pieces of paper and have 6 meetings at the end of January, early February with the lines of business. He's not going to go in and say, I got our law firms to do this for 4% cheaper, or I blew out the budget. He's going to be able to say, here's what I learned about all the things we did, here's how it compares, and here's what you should do about it next year. Data analysis is nothing if it's not actionable, right? It's pretty pictures, it's desktop, wallpaper, if you can't actually do something with it. And that's the real key here, is that he has the ability at the end of the year to provide actual advice to his client. I'm going to skip that, even though you could start this day, because I want to show you this. So then we get one, I just think this is kind of flashy. So another client, I actually had a lawyer, and this is one of those situations where the lawyer says, how am I going to price it? No, how am I going to do it? That sort of thing. I got a call like in June, and the lawyer says, you're the data guy, right? Yeah, so I want to do, the client wants to do an international heat map of banking regulations. I'm not really sure where to start, but I need to start like tomorrow. And Michael talks about, you need to know where you're going, so you know how to get there, right? You got to go to the beginning and work towards the end. We knew the end was a map, but we had to figure out how to get there. And I knew we could do a map in Tableau, so I was fairly confident that we could pull the trigger. She was able to sit down with me. We wrote out the survey. So it's 29 different countries and it's 27, I guess this is live. It's 27 different areas of banking regulation, primarily around emerging payments. In all these different countries, as you can see, all around the world, she wanted for each country and each topic, she wanted to have a risk score, she wanted to have some narrative, and further, she wanted to do it all twice because she wanted to know current as well as emerging. And so I was able to sit down with her at the beginning and really structure what the survey looked like. Before you go out to local council in 29 countries, let's think about what we want to do at the end. We were able to help her structure the survey so she could go out. 2 months later, she's got all the surveys back. And we're able to create this heat map that allows you to see for each of your issues, what does the risk look like? And again, using those same stoplight KPIs. If local council says it's a 4 or a 5 and it's red, and etc. When you hover over a country, it gives you the score and a little more information. You click on the country, it gives you some narrative down below. The beauty of all this is the Tableau is it's easy to work with, but we're able to structure the data so you can actually fit it in here. And then I got a call from the head, the GC of their credit cards division, and she says, before I present this to the international group tomorrow, and she's calling from like Mexico City, I think I put that in the introduction. So like I get a phone call, a random number, it's the GC of the cards division. And before I present this to people in all these countries tomorrow, I was wondering if you could make a few changes. And I don't think I had realized like how important this was to them. I had sort of failed up front to ask questions about, who's going to use it, what's the plan for it. I was going to give them this thing, but I had not done that work up front about exactly what you think it can be. And then you have some of that where even if we'd had those discussions, they'd have seen this and said, oh, well, can I do this, this, and this? So sometimes that's going to happen anyway. But all of a sudden, I've got this person on the phone, and I have to figure out how I can try in a day before her big international meeting that I had no idea was going to happen to provide her, more functionality. And what she wanted to be able to do, and I was able to, with the help of Tableau people, not on my phone, I was able to. She kept saying, "Click through. I want to click through. Click through. I want to click through to more information. It's got to be a click through." And I was able to create for her where, as you've hovered, you can actually click through to another dashboard. So this is another Tableau dashboard where you can have more information about. So it's like kind of the full. You get your executive summary narrative on the first page. Here you get the full narrative. This is lorem. It's not only lorem ipsum. It's that bacon lorem ipsum where they throw in meat products. So it's not real. But she was able to click through for more information. And she said, well, I'd also like to be able then to further click out to the full English translation of this Chinese emerging regulation. And I had to figure out how to be able to build in hyperlinks to click out to those things. And that works, although I won't do it for you. And she said, I want a back button. Right? So she's going through this and she's like, oh, you can do that? Well, can you do this? Oh, you can do that? You can do this? I didn't do the back button the first day. I didn't do all that stuff. But eventually we were able to get a lot deeper into being able to create what looks like a back button. It really isn't. It's actually it's a little data visualization. It's just a true false where you click on it and it actually goes back to the previous page. So it was an interesting exercise in I did all things right? I set up the structure in advance. I didn't wait. I didn't say, go get your numbers and then come back and we'll see what happens. I knew I could build the thing that they wanted eventually, but I hadn't asked all those questions up front. It made it more difficult down the line to be able to do something this cool. And luckily, mostly due to Tableau, and me spending hours upon hours, we were able to provide a thing that they're actually now, they want to keep it going forever, which is also a question I hadn't really thought about is, do you want to update it in perpetuity or is it a snapshot in time? And of course, they want to update it in perpetuity. And we're actually talking about, okay, well, how do we hand this over to you guys so that you're not paying us, forever to change narratives and change numbers and that sort of thing. And then they want to take it and they don't have Tableau and it's a big company. It's easier for them to try and transition this into ClickView, which is something I haven't actually worked before, but somewhat similar. They want to recreate the whole thing in ClickView because it's easier than getting Tableau approved at whatever levels in this gigantic company. So I said, well, I'll be happy to answer as many questions as you want, but I don't know anything about ClickView, so you're gonna have to sort of figure that out on your own. So there are interesting international adventures in data analysis. Any questions about any of that?
So I have a question on the employment law piece that you were going over a little earlier. So you're able to speak to the client and show quantitatively the type of work that you're doing for them. And they can turn around and use that to drive policy changes or training programs, which in turn will reduce the amount of work that they have for you.
That's the secret. Yeah, I mean, the goal of that is for them to pay us less, right?
So how does that resonate internally at a law firm?
It's interesting. It goes back to what we were talking about there with, working with the coalition of the willing, right? I'm not trying to get this into certain clients where I just know it's not going to click to them that if we're being paid less for these fairly low-level commoditized administrative agency charges, if we get paid less for that it's going to mean sort of less revenue. It will mean less revenue, but clients, lawyers like to talk about stickiness. I really hate the term stickiness, frankly, but it does sort of make you sticky, right? That client, because we can help him provide business value, and we can help him over time reduce his charges. He's saying, well, could you help us over here? Could you help us over there? In places where we wouldn't, we in a lot of cases, we're just another law firm, right? There's a lot of law firms who can do the work, the substantive work. This kind of stuff helps us stand out among that crowd a little bit. And it typically will lead to more work, or in some cases, it's allowing us to actually bring in new clients for the first time. So then it makes the whole, the firm better off. But no, that is the sort of secret to it. In some cases, we've been able to monetize the innovation, I think, a little bit, which is a little different. Some of the stuff we build, the thing with the 6 pieces of paper, for example, that project, we actually started, they paid us sort of consulting to build some of that stuff out in advance, because we were having these conversations, he said, you're going to put a bunch of work in before I send you any legal work. And we said, yeah. We were able to come up to some sort of financial arrangement where they help to pay for that up front. So that's not legal money, but it's still green.
And a lot of this stuff comes out as a flat fee, and it's that stickiness, that continuation or continuity that allows you to, invest the upfront costs, but over time look for ways to reduce your running costs so that you increase overall your profitability. And you have, you provide more consistency to the client with regard to how much they're going to have to pay each month, each quarter, and then also more consistency to yourself, knowing what your costs are going to be, each invoicing period. And if you know that, then you have something to use as sort of a benchmark. And if you're tracking it properly, you want to see those costs ultimately go down while you're tracking your profits go up.
So you can do a trend analysis and anticipate how much work you're going to have and come up with a flat fee arrangement that improves your the law firm's profitability.
Yeah, so we have a pricing and analytics manager that helps us do that. Andy's really good at that too, but in part Andy's good at it because he tracks the data over various projects, so he has a good idea about how much a similarly situated project is going to cost. And again, we go back to data-driven decisions. If I'm properly tracking this stuff in order to analyze it later, not just to get an invoice to my client, then I begin to accumulate data that results in trends to let me know when I go into a flat fee deal, how much should I charge so that I can still make money.
So there's a lot of chatter on the blogs about a flat fee model, but I think a lot of those fees are being set just randomly, like shot in the dark, and not driven by data. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot. So legal hackers, right? There's a lot of opportunity in that. I think the thing that no one has been able to really unlock is is there a best way to really set a fixed price for something, right? Because we always hear from clients is, oh, it's great, you gave us a fixed fee. So you took the number of hours times the billable hour, and that's the fixed fee. Well, it isn't really getting away from the billable hour, it's just repackaging the billable hour. And I think there's a lot of opportunity still firms are doing it. I think we're pricing for value in situations more than we ever have before, but we're still not great at it. I think there's a lot of opportunity for helping lawyers and clients set pricing based on fixed pricing based on value and not just repackaging the typical inputs.
But part of it too is you guys are expanding your capability set, and that allows you to compete in a different way due to a different product mix than 90%, 95% of law
It changes
firms
the
out there.
conversation. I mean, it really, we in the work that we're doing are having different conversations, and we're forcing our lawyers that we're working with to have different conversations than we've had with clients before. There's a pretty big thing that we're working on right now, and we've been working with the client for a while. We haven't even discussed price yet. It's not like the first thing, It was like an RFP. There wasn't any pricing in the RFP. It was more about kind of what would you do and how would you do it and what would you do in this situation. We're having in-person meetings. We haven't even got around to what's it going to cost yet. And that is, or can your lawyers do it, right? The lawyers want to put all their bios in the RFPs and make sure that they know we're lawyers and we're really good. These guys say, we know you're good. We want to figure out where we're going to go and how we're going to go there. We haven't got around to the pricing yet, which is crazy.
And from what I've seen,
maybe it's free. Oh my God, is it free?
Is that free?
I haven't thought about that.
So in China, the consultancy that I worked for, price was typically the last thing that they talked about, because again, that defined stage piece. How are you going to charge me something? How are you going to charge me for something when you don't even know what it is yet, right? That's weird. That's like going to the grocery store and grabbing a box of cereal and not knowing what the price is, and you get to the cash register and they're like, well, I think today I'm going to charge you $3.75. You know what I mean? Like, why? What's the basis for that? So I think clients really like the transparency that you create when you go in and you say, time out. Let's figure out what you need, why you think you need it, before I tell you how much it's going to cost. And I might disqualify myself. I might say, this is not for me, but I can tell you somebody who might be able to help you. And that's a completely different conversation in a different game.
No questions? Now that the Lane Powell guy is gone, we can actually be a little more open about things.
He's actually watching. He's on the bus watching this.
I think we're at time.
Yeah, I really appreciate all you folks coming out.
Thanks for sharing, guys.
Yeah, no, this is really great. Yeah, thank you so much.
Very good job.